Okay, so this video is just a continuation of the previous one where I'd set up CentOS 6 on a RAID 1 LVM system. So what I'm now going to do is to create a 10 gig disk for CentOS 7, and what I'm going to be doing is trying to put that into the same disk that the CentOS 6 is already on. So I'm going to create the image and then basically run the virtual machine. And so I'll be just basically going through the installer for the CentOS 7. So now with CentOS 7, we don't really need anything special. I can get rid of kdump, because we're not going to be doing debugging for them. And now when it comes to the installation, you want to configure the partitioning, because what it'll do, it'll create a complicated LVM system, which doesn't help when it comes to trying to get it onto the CentOS 6 system. Okay, so now what you have to do is choose standard partition, and then you add that. So mount point is just root. And if you just add mount point, it'll use all of the space for it. And then if you just do the file system as x4, and then update the settings, and you can do a label, because that can come in handy. Update that. So if you're done, so basically, yeah, and it's just giving a warning that there's no swap partition, but we don't care about that. So it's telling us what it's going to do. So basically, just accept that and then install. Okay, so now we just wait for the CentOS 7 to install. Okay, so now that's set up. So if you just reboot it, okay, so we're in there now, and basically, if we That's one thing you have to get used to with CentOS, is that it has a funny system when it comes to the networking. And so basically, if you try typing ifconfig, it's not there because Red Hat have decided to be difficult, because the other companies, they haven't. So Ubuntu and SUSE still give you ifconfig, but Red Hat have decided to be like Microsoft a bit, and a bit like Apple, just removing the sort of popular utilities. And so we have to try and find out what the network interface is. So the easiest way to find that out is to just get a list of the configuration file. And see, it's got a funny name. It's ENP0S2, whatever that means. And so if you have to do DH clients, and then you type in that funny name that they choose, and then finally you can install some sensible utilities. So for whatever reason, they've decided that ETH0 is too good a name for the network interface. It's got to be something funny instead. So that's better. See, ifconfig's back, so now it's a little bit more normal than usual. So what we now have to do is just SSH into it. Okay, so we're in there now, and what we now have to do is so we've got Grub there, so what we have to do is remove that. So basically Grub 2 is CentOS 6 runs with Grub 1. And basically, Grub 1 is a lot more sensible because it's just a text file and you just type the stuff in. But with Grub 2, they've gone a bit crazy. I'm not sure why, and you just have all this sort of mess in the config file, which hardly makes any sense. So it's actually easier just getting rid of it. check that this. Okay. Okay, so that's Grub 2 out of the way, and basically they don't have the old Grub for CentOS 7, so we just have to install an RPM. Okay, so that's installed, and so now basically if we check the partitions, you can see we just got the sort of SDA1, and if we go into the boot partition, so we've got the nothing in there. So we've got the kernel, the rescue one, and the initial installation kernel, and then the init ramfs as well. So basically, we need the two that we need for running from the CentOS 6. Is we need these two files, and we just basically need to we just need to copy them. The easiest way is just to make a tar of them. Alright, so now we're just copying. Alright, yeah. It's in the wrong place. Okay, so we've got that file, and so basically we've got that out of the we've got that out of the CentOS 7 system, but there's just one more thing I need to get from it, and right, I just need the UUID of the file system, because we'll be using that to boot from the Grub of the other system when we copy the file system. So basically, if we finish with that for now, and so in the CentOS 7, you can basically power that off. Right, so the next thing we have to do is back in the CentOS 6 virtual machine. So now what we're going to do is boot it up, but with the sort of rescue disk, and anyway, you'll see what's going to happen. So what we're basically having to do next is to get the partition from, the root file system onto this disk. So we're going to start that up next. Start from the CD, and then you do rescue the installed system. We don't need a network for this one. And then just skip the it's scanning for the disk, and then just choose to start the shell. Okay, so basically we're in the shell now, and if we do check the partitions, we'll find that we can see the disks, sort of the bare disk, but obviously there's no RAID or LVM. So to start that up, first we have to use mdaddm to assemble the RAID arrays. So that's up, and then we have to get the LVM volume started as well. Dash. And so now if we check the partitions, we'll see we've got the two RAID systems and also the LVM up as well. So now basically the LVM, you notice, for the CentOS 6 takes up all the space. So what we have to do is we have to now shrink that. So first thing we have to do is do a disk check. Then we have to shrink the LVM, the file system that contains the CentOS 6. And so we'll shrink that to just sort of 15 gigs. Okay, so that's shrunk to 15 gigs. So now what we do is to shrink the LVM partition to so we'll shrink that to 20 gigs just so we've got a little bit of margin. And so the way we do that is just with LD reduce. Make that 20 gigs. Okay. And so, just to be sure it's okay, just run a quick check again. And yeah, it seems like it's fine, because obviously if we'd gone too far, that wouldn't have worked, and it would have obviously told us. And so now that's shrunk, the next thing we have to do is create another logical volume for the CentOS 7. So we do that with LV create. So the logical volume is going to be called CentOS 7, and it's going to be in CentOS 6 volume group. Alright, so now if we check the partitions this time, so we can see we've got two volume groups now, both of 20 gigs in size. And so basically the second volume group, that's the one we're going to be, or the CentOS 7. So basically, even though you've got DM0 and 1, you don't use them to do the copying. It's actually the names of the volume group. So basically, it's called CentOS 7. So what we effectively want to do is to get the data from SDC1, which is the CentOS 7, onto the CentOS 7 volume group, and we do that with vd. Now, of course, if you type this wrong, then you'll basically end up killing your file system on the CentOS 6. So you just got to make sure it's SDC, that's the 10. So SDC1 is the 10 gig CentOS 7 setup we just created. And the dev CentOS 6, CentOS 7, that's the volume group we just created to put it onto. Alright. Okay, so that's now copying. Okay, so that's finished copying over. So now we have our CentOS system with basically set up so that well, all it's done is copy the data over. So now comes the sort of more the bit where we have to somehow convince the CentOS, Grub to boot the CentOS 7. So if we come out of here, and with this, it's just E0, which is a lot more friendly. Okay, so if we check so you can see it's only 15 gigs now, and boot. Right, so we can see just a couple of kernels that are in there. And so what we need to do now is to copy those files that we copied from the Centos 7 back into the Centos 6. Okay, so we uncompress that, and I haven't installed the usual in this yet. Okay, so for this, just for convenience, I'll just make it so the network interface comes up automatically. Okay, so now actually there's just one thing which is a little bit annoying. It's just that I've just got a problem with the UTF-8 on this. Yes, that's better. It's just it's a bit messed up unless I do it this way. Okay, so basically what we have to do is copy the initRD, or move the initRD and kernel into the boot directory, and basically we have to edit the grub, but it's easier to do that it's easier to do that from the console. So alright, so this is the good old file from Grub. So Grub 1, so it doesn't have all the complexity. So what we have to do is just copy And so this is so we just get the name from the other. Oh right, actually I forgot. I haven't got the name, so we just have to call it Centos 7. Yeah, because I use the rescue kernel, but that's the one with all the device drivers in it. So for the name of the kernel, we have to use the one that we copied across. I could have made it shorter actually, but I don't. And so we need the read only, but then for the root, we have to do it according to, see, because what you have to realize is that this line here is for the init.rd or the init ramfs from CentOS 6, but the init ramfs from CentOS 7, it actually reads it differently, so you have to use the format that the CentOS 7 init.rd expects for the command line from the kernel. And so the other things you have to add is, and this is the important bit, because basically without this, it won't actually load the LVM and the RAID. And so that should be enough. Yeah, we can leave it like that for now, because there was more. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. We don't actually need, all you need is the root. The two important things you need are the root and the rd.auto equals 1. And of course, I have to put the init.rd in, or we'll be wasting our time. Right, so basically, so that's the entry for that kernel. So now I'm just thinking, I think that should be enough. So basically, if we reboot that, okay, so we choose a CentOS 7 and then press return. And look at that. Would you believe it? Yes, I was surprised. And look, there you go. It's as easy as that. I have to admit, it actually turned out easier than I thought it would be. So now we basically have CentOS 7 and CentOS 6 both on the same machine. Now, admittedly, if it's a machine that you're going to be in front of, then this would pretty much be the end of what you need to do. But this has basically come about because of something that I had to do for a client. And the next, obviously, if this is a remote machine, you've still got a problem, because how can you tell it which one to boot into? Because at the moment, it will always boot into CentOS 6. So what we basically have to do is, when you look at, if you go into boot, what you'll see is it has the it still has the Grub 2 stuff there. But what you really want, if you want to be able to boot back or boot into this system and then back into the old one remotely, what you have to do is to mount the boot from CentOS 6 in here. And so the way we do that is basically with the FS tab. Let me see. That's right. Yeah, sorry, I was just being silly. So basically, so if you look, we can see that okay, so it turned out that I was actually booting into the old file system. So what I'm going to have to do is basically what happened is what the problem is that the initRD doesn't have the from the CentOS 7 because it wasn't built with the RAID and LVM. It's not included in the initRD. So what we basically have to do is go back in there and actually create one. So I have to boot back in to the CentOS 7. Okay, so right, so now if we go into boot, you can see the two initRD, sorry, the initRAMFS that we have for the 3.10 kernel. So what we have to do now is there's a program called Trackheart, and what it does is it oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, so what it does is it takes the kernel modules and then puts them into the initRAMFS. And so we just need to find out what modules it has, because basically we have to add them in. So okay, so now if you look in the list, the one that we need SSH client. I suppose that might come in handy someday, I don't know. As you can see, there is a lot of it, but it's the MD RAID we're after. And I think LVM might be included, but right, but basically, these are the ones that we need, and so the M will tell us which modules are included, and then you have to put in the name of the initramfs that you want to change. And then finally the version of the kernel. And so now if you do return on that, it will now rebuild the initramfs. But then as you can see, it says MD RAID cannot be found. So the reason for that is simply because we don't have the MD admin installed, so we have to install that. So now if you rebuild it, so now we need LVM as well. So basically, in order for these to be included, you have to have it actually installed on the system as well. Okay, so we go into the Centos 7, and I just tried it before and it looks like I missed something out. So, alright, yeah, I forgot I have to do the networking. Okay, so right, so when you make the ramfs, I use the command. I use the command, and this was the one I used before. But what I forgot is, even though the modules were put in for the MD RAID and LVM, I still need to add the actual kernel module. And so the way we do that is with add drivers. And the ones we want are RAID 1 and dm-mod. Just check that. Yeah, that's correct. So we need, so obviously these, we need to add these two drivers in. So basically, run it again, or I'll probably cut the other bit out. So this will be the first time you see this command being run. And what it does is it adds the MD RAID and LVM modules to the Trackheart init RAMFS. Sorry, to the init RAMFS, and then it also adds the RAID 1 and DM mod kernel modules into the init RAMFS as well. Okay, so now we just need a copy of the so you notice if you look at the top, the init RAMFS, it says it's 18635. If you do it again, it's 18720. So you can see it's added a little bit into it, you know, a few more files in. So now I need to copy that file out. Okay, so Centos 7 is down. So now we boot it again without the Centos 7, the file that we did the copy with. And so we go back into Centos 6. And we copy that, the file with the init RAMFS back in. Okay, so we don't need to change anything in the config file. All we have to do is copy just the, so that's 18282, which is replacing 18198, so it's got a little bit extra in it, so hopefully that's enough. So overwrite it. And so now if we just reboot, we choose Centos 7. And there you go. So we're in. And so that's officially the Centos 7 booted up. So now to activate the networking. So now if we do a df, we can see, so See, so the root file system is the CentOS 6, CentOS 7 volume that logical volume that we created. And so there you have basically the two systems running from one disk. But now, like I say, that's okay for local, but then if you have the machine remote, you need to have a way to reboot between them. So to do that, we have to mount the boot partition. And we can see that the boot partition is MD0. So the way we do that, so it's MD0. Well, admittedly, okay. I know it shouldn't change, but just in case something happens to the MD, what we better do is so we give it a label, and so what we can do then is, so this is to make sure that in case the MD drive changes, just make sure it is. Just want to make sure it is X2. Yeah, it is, because it's got the extra features on there. So if we look in boot now, you see it has the new sort of CentOS 7 items in there. And if we do a mount and look again, it's got the CentOS 6 things in there instead. So now at the moment, if we do a reboot, so when it boots normally, it will go into CentOS 6. Yes, that's the CentOS 6 root. And so basically a normal boot will always take you into CentOS 6. But what we can do to actually boot into CentOS 7, we just have to make a change to the Grub configuration file. basically, where it's got default, rather than 0, you just make it saved. So by having the default as saved, what that means is that whichever one we choose, it's the one that will actually boot up. So and then in order to start up in CentOS 7, what we have to do is put in a special command. So I'll just get that command now. Right, so 0 is CentOS 6, and then 1 is CentOS 7. So if we put this command in, okay, so now if we reboot, so what that's done is it saved the default as 1, and 1 is the CentOS 7 kernel. So if we reboot there and then see what happens, as you can see, we went straight into CentOS 7. So if your machine's remote, this is a good okay. So when we boot, so it's into CentOS 6. And so if we go in and let's try again. So we've saved the default as 1. And so now when it reboots, it goes into CentOS 7. And so now So if you get the networking up, right, so here we are in the Centos 7, and you've noticed that boot is mounted as well. So if we go to boot and look inside there, we see the same files as in CentOS 6. So all we basically have to do now is put that same command in. But this time we do want 0. So we're in, or actually, just to show it's working, if I reboot, it takes us out. Oh, actually, funny, it's actually working properly now. Because it's actually doing once like it's supposed to, funny enough. But anyway, so what we do, so we get rid of the once. Because I was doing this on another machine and the once wasn't working, but now for some reason it is. I don't know why. So default is 1. So now, if you reboot that, so then that goes into CentOS 7. So if you reboot, yeah, see, it tells you it's booting CentOS 7. So we've changed the default to CentOS 7. So no matter how many times just one more time, just because it's quick. See, it says CentOS 7. So basically now CentOS 7 is the default. So every time you boot it, it will start up as CentOS 7. So now if we get tired of CentOS 7 because of all the changes that Red Hat have made, we can then decide we want to go back to CentOS 6. So what we do is we make the default 0 and reboot. And so now you can see it's going to be booting CentOS 6. Give it a reboot. And when it comes back, it's still CentOS 6. So there you have it. So that's how you can have a CentOS 6 and 7 booting from the same hard drive. And even with RAID and LVM if you want to as well, for a bit of extra protection. And you can basically choose which one boots as the default. And you can basically choose the default boot up from inside either OS for if your machine is remote as well. So hopefully someone will find all that useful. It took me a while to work it out. And I've got one more addition to put onto it, but I'll try and get around to that whenever I can. Okay, see you.